I'll be home in the morning.
Where are you going?
I'm staying over at Susie's tonight.
What's new? The flyer.
The papers call him the grabber.
I wish you wouldn't call him that.
You don't actually believe that story, do you? Because he can't hear you, and he doesn't really take kids that safe.
The Black Phone. Everyone and their mom has heard of this smash hit, and as one of the people lucky enough to have seen the film, I can say it was worth every second of the hour and 40-minute runtime. The movie starts by introducing us to a middle school boy and his younger sister who can see vague visions of the future, who live in a house with their semi-abusive alcoholic father and dead mother. The neighborhood has recently seen an increase in missing child cases, and we quickly find out why, as our main character Finney is kidnapped by a man in a devil's mask, the Grabber, who we presume to be the mass kidnapper and killer targeting the children of this neighborhood.
Would you hand me my hat? Yes, sir. I am a part-time magician. Would you like to see a magic trick?
For the remainder of the movie, Finney receives help from the spirits of past victims as he tries to escape the Grabber's basement without provoking him enough to be killed. And while this plot's all well and good, that's not what we're here to talk about today. The point of interest here is the way in which Finney receives help from these spirits. That being the black landline phone that's bolted to a wall in Finney's cell in the basement. Typical landlines work by receiving an input from a microphone, which is sent through a wire into the main unit, where they're then processed and sent to the recipient's phone through a longer wire. And then these signals are then processed into verbal speech and heard by the other user, right? Don't pay too much attention to what I just said, because I have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyhow, seems simple enough, right? Finney receives a signal from his phone, where he can hear the ghosts and heed their advice. However, this is where we run into our first problem. The basement. Finney is trapped in a basement with solid concrete walls, and the phone, which is attached to said walls, has no discernible external wiring. This raises the question of how exactly Finney is getting phone calls from the black phone when we have no way of knowing if there's actually a wire behind the phone or not. It seems completely impossible to get a call on an unplugged phone, so most people just pass this detail off and assume that there's a wire behind the phone. However, I'm not most people, and I guarantee that by the end of this video, you two will be convinced that there's no wire behind the black phone at all. Let's start off with the plausibility of there being a wire behind the phone in the first place. The wall is solid concrete, and despite there being evidence of plumbing as seen by the toilet in the basement, there's no evidence at all of any kind of ventilation or electric wiring. The basement is ventilated by a singular rectangular window blocked up by steel bars, and there's likely no electricity running in the basement because there's not a single electric light on at any time in the movie in the basement. You may pass the lights being off as an artistic decision to make the movie more spooky, but this does not confirm in any way the presence of electricity in the basement. The story of the Black Phone takes place in Denver, Colorado, specifically during the late 1970s. When searching for homes in Denver that had a basement and were built between 1940 and 1980, I discovered that the building Finney is trapped in was likely built in the mid-1940s. Houses during this time period never really had inlaid wiring in their basements because doing so in concrete would be way harder than the normal drywall and wood frame of the upstairs rooms. So it's easy to tell whether or not a basement had electricity because all the wiring would be visible and exposed. There is no such visible wiring in the Grabber's basement, which proves that the landline phone could not have been plugged in. There is no way that there was a wire behind that phone. However, our guy Finney is still getting calls from this phone, even though that there's definitely, without a doubt, no way there's a wire connected to this phone. How can we explain this? At first, this question had me stumped. I had no idea how I could even begin to explain how phone calls would just go through an unplugged phone. I was about to just give up and scrap this whole video. But then I took a step back and looked at the problem from a whole new angle. The child victims of the Grabber that helped Finney are all dead. That means they're all ghosts. And I don't know that much about ghosts, but I'm pretty sure they can just send signals through the wire without it being connected to anything. So that made the whole problem a lot simpler, but there's still some things I need to clear up. The first cellular phone was made in 1973, and since the events in The Black Phone happened at least after 1975, it's technically possible that the black phone in the grabber's basement was actually a wireless cellular phone that was modified to look like a landline instead of an actual landline. To definitively prove that the phone was actually a landline phone with no wires behind it, we have to prove that the black phone was not a cellular device. First cellular phones had a battery life of only around 30 minutes, which means in order for the cellular phone theory to work and the black phone, the main phone box that was actually attached to the wall would have to be some sort of battery bank that could keep the phone charged for long periods of time, as Finney was trapped in the basement for several days. This seems like a plausible explanation at first, until we consider the scene where Finney cuts the wire connecting the phone box, and then he fills the speakers with dirt to add weight so he can use it as a weapon. And this obviously cuts the power to the phone, and there's at least 30 minutes between when he cuts the wire and when he actually uses the phone as a weapon to beat the grabber. The phone doesn't need power to be used as a weapon, but even with the wires cut and the speakers full of dirt, the phone still gets a call from the victims, and the grabber is forced to listen to the children through the phone. This disproves the cellular phone theory completely, and proves without a shadow of a doubt that there's no wire behind the phone, and that it is in fact a landline phone that gets calls through ghost magic and not through any kind of wires behind the wall or any kind of wireless technology.
It's for you.
Welcome to the nightmare end of your pathetic little life.
If any of your friends are claiming that there's a wire behind the phone in the movie The Black Phone, make sure to clear up any confusion and let them know that there's definitely not a wire behind the phone. If they don't believe you and they still believe that there's a wire behind the black phone when there clearly isn't, then please show them this video, because I cannot sleep at night knowing that there's still people that believe that there's a wire behind the black phone.